We're going to go through your warranty and cleaning and oiling the machine and maintaining your warranty. You can see after a day's use the dust that has collected and the lint from the thread. And the reason these machines collect so much is because we run so much thread through so quickly. So make sure you wipe that out real well. I like to put a drop or two of oil in here. Turn it on the manual mode. Unthread the front of the head. And turn this on and just let it run in the manual mode. Warm your machine up. And what that drop or two of oil does is that if there's any lint in the bobbin hook assembly, it will gather that lint up and spit it out.
Now our sewing machine is setting in our cloth, and what we want to do our warranty work, our cleaning, to do this, we're going to go ahead and slide the machine either to the right or left part of the frame, and we're going to go ahead and pull the bobbin case out. And you know, on the bobbin case we have a little latch. We're going to lift up the latch, and as that latch comes out, it actually will hold the bobbin in place, and you can actually take the bobbin case and the bobbin out. And you'll notice where we're talking about in here, we can see the lint in here, and this is where we're going to take our brush and just kind of clean that out in as we brush. We literally just want to get all the lint and everything we can with the brush, the best that you can do, wiping inside the what we call the race area. And that gets that nice and clean. And then you could actually get onto the back side of the sewing machine. With holding the back side of the sewing machine, this way you can actually turn the hand wheel, and by turning the hand wheel you can actually see how you can just kind of spin the hand wheel in the counterclockwise rotation, and that's the way the machine rotates. And slowly turning it, you're able to just get in here and clean with your lint brush, and you get all the lint completely out. And this would be part of the cleaning process that generally we recommend that after every quilt you would get in here and just clean that race area.
If you just take your nail, you can pop that spring right out. I like to put a drop of oil in. Take my cloth, wipe it around in here and clean that out real good. Give it a brushing or two. Bring back in here. You can see in the little slits here where those little ridges that were sticking out on the sides have now seated themselves back into the spring, and the spring is laying flat. Then I'm going to lift up the tab in the front, and I'm just going to brush this out just a hair.
Now, as you've noticed, we've taken the bobbin and the bobbin case out of the machine. We'll notice there's quite a bit of lint, and as we pull the bobbin out, we've got lots of lint underneath and in the bobbin case area. So again, we can go ahead and just take our lint brush and take all that out. Sometimes it's not necessary to go ahead and take the actual backlash spring out if we've just cleaned it recently, so we can literally just take that and just clean it inside and out, and you'll notice how we're able to get all that lint that builds up in there. Now what happens if we have all that lint build up in there and we actually have the bobbin in the bobbin case, it literally will take that bobbin, and you'll notice that the bobbin is actually kind of just beneath or seated below the metal. The actual bobbin case is a little larger than the actual bobbin. If you actually have extra lint in there, that literally will take that bobbin, and you'll notice it actually starts popping it out to where it's past the bobbin case area itself. And so that actually will cause the bobbin to ride up against the race in the hook area, and so it will actually create more tension in the machine in itself, so that you'll find that you'll actually get the pokies or the loopies on the bottom side because we've got irregular tension simply because we haven't cleaned the lint out, and therefore you get on the top tension, you start cranking down on the top tension to try to bring it up, when really all it was just too much lint in the bobbin case area.
Also on your bobbin case, there's one more spring that you need to clean. And never ever use metal. Always grab a paper business card and run it to the back and then run it out the front. If you get lint down in this groove here, it can create such havoc with your thread. So if you just take a paper business card and run that in there and run it out and get any lint that's in there. Then to load your bobbin, hold the thread in your right pinky finger, thread coming off of the top of the bobbin, put it into the case, through the slat, into the spring. Your bobbin's loaded. And when you're running regular cotton thread with a cotton quilt here, you don't need to run it through the pigtail.
What we're going to show you here is how to actually put the bobbin in the bobbin case so that the bobbin is rotating in the proper location. We've actually just put 2 dots on the bobbin so you can actually see the bobbin spin when we get it in here. Not necessary that you do that. This is just for demonstration purposes only. We're going to drop the bobbin into the case, and you'll notice that I have the thread here. We're going to go ahead and put it through the slot where the bobbin case rides through going into the spring. But before I do it into the spring, I'm going to notice as I start pulling the thread, the bobbin is actually spinning, and you can see the dots rotating in a counterclockwise rotation. So once I'm in the slot, I'm going to turn the bobbin case and literally start pulling the thread right to where it slides underneath the actual spring, and it has a little finger right here, and it's actually going to snap underneath the spring, and now I'm completely underneath the spring between both areas where the spring latch is, and I've literally got tension on the bobbin. You'll notice again it's spinning counterclockwise. I've gone through the slot, I've come underneath the spring, and I'm actually pulling the thread sideways until it actually snaps underneath the little pinching finger here, and now it's in the tension in the bobbin case.
To replace the bobbin, now that we're clean, you set it into the bobbin hook assembly, line it up with the notch, and listen to it snap back into place.
You'll notice that on the outside of the bobbin case we actually have the latch, and the latch is actually it's spring loaded, and when you have the latch completely open you can literally turn the bobbin case upside down and the bobbin will not come out. If you let go of the latch, you'll notice that the bobbin will fall out of the bobbin case area. So a way you want to go ahead and put the bobbin and the bobbin case into the machine is holding it. You'll notice that the bobbin does not shake out. We can come into the bobbin, and at this point you'll notice that I can actually take the latch, and it's holding the bobbin, and once I get it into the bobbin area, then I release the latch, and at that point then I would go ahead and snap it, and you'll literally, or push it in, and you'll actually hear it snap. Now that snap means that it's actually held in place into the bobbin, and the bobbin case is into the hook race area here. So again, once we get ready to take it out, we can literally open up the finger, and by holding the finger, that bobbin will come back out. Again, the reason we do that is it actually holds the bobbin in place. But generally what we do is we go ahead and once we get it into the bobbin hook area, I just release it, and then you'll get that snapping sound, and you know that the bobbin and the bobbin case are in the proper location.
Okay, now that we've cleaned the bobbin hook assembly, we're going to oil the machine up and get ready for use for the day. You have 2 oiling points on the Tin Lizzie 18. One is at the top, and it literally takes 2-3 drops of oil in the morning. You have an oiling port here on the deck of the machine, and it also has a dipstick to it. And what I do is I take the dipstick and I run it down my finger, and I see how far up I have oil. And you can see I have oil to at least this far, so this machine is plenty oiled for the day, and I really don't need to add any here. If it starts getting down lower, or you see none on the dipstick, then you want to add 4 or 5 drops in where the dipstick goes and then replace the dipstick, and your machine is oiled for the day. Okay, now that we've cleaned and oiled our machine, we're ready to quilt for the day. And what you want to do is come up to the very center of your quilt within 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch in the needle up position. If you touch the needle up, it will give you 1 full stitch and bring your bobbin thread up. When you have both your bobbin thread and your top thread, hold on to both of them, stitch 1, 2, 3 times. Make sure it's in the Lizzie stitch mode and start. Once that lights up, the machine's ready to move. Move it off to your left from center. Attaching all 3 pieces. And stopping. Okay. Lift your hopping foot lever. Gain your thread with your left pinky, put the hopping lever back down in the needle up position, give it 1 full stitch, and bring up your bobbin thread. At that time, you can clip both your top thread and your bottom thread and detach from the quilt. There are 2 times when you need to, 2 main times that you need to use this hopping foot lever. One, it's always lifted to gain your thread. As soon as you lower that level, you can no longer pull the thread. So you want to use it when 1, you're threading the machine, and 2, when you have finished quilting. Again, start from the center. In the needle up position, give it 1 full stitch, bring up your bobbin thread, stitch 1, 2, 3. And what I like to do at this time is this is when I like to double check and see the stitch quality and see if I have any pokies on top or if I have any on the bottom. And right now, I think this is looking pretty good. I'm seeing a really good stitch there. How about you, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. Now, should we give it pokies and show them how to adjust it and what they look like, or just let it go?
Let's give them pokies.
Dang it. Okay. Loosen this up. All right. At this time, after I've sewn across the top and attached all 3 pieces to the take-up lever, then what I do is in the Lizzie stitch mode, I hit start and I quilt within 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch all the way down my left side. And what that does, because we run our fabric through this frame system, is that allows for me to be able to quilt real heavy right here, real heavy right here, or real heavy here, and it will not allow my top to slide in. So therefore I come off clean and straight. I'm going to lift my hopping foot, I'm going to gain my thread with my left pinky, put the hopping foot in the down position, 1 needle down and up, lift up my bobbin thread, clip both the top and the bobbin threads and detach from the quilt. Move it over to the right side, 1 needle down and up, bring up my bobbin threads, stitch, 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 turn it on, and quilt within that 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch all the way down my right side. Stop the machine, lift the hopping foot lever, gain the thread in my left pinky, come back to where I ended, 1 stitch, bring up the bobbin thread, the top thread, clip off and detach from the quilt. Now at this time we're going to take a look. Oh dear, we now have pokies on the back of our quilt. So what that means is that it's showing the top thread in the bottom of the quilt. So what I want to do at this time is I want to tighten my top tension. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this one full circle. And again, within that 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch from the side of the quilt, I'm going to attach, and I'm going to stitch down 3 or 4 inches, because what's going to happen in all this checking of my tension, if I do that within an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to end up binding that in and nobody's going to see it anyway. That's why that's a good place to check my tensions. Okay, we're going to be checking the second, and I still have a few more pokies showing just a little bit, so I'm going to tighten this one more full turn. With my hopping foot, gave my thread one needle down, up, bring up my bobbin thread, clip off and detach from the quilt. Okay, that definitely pulled my thread up into the quilt, and I have no more pokies showing, and that was all the adjustment that needed to be made. And I'm now ready to finish quilting the rest of this quilt because I have now adjusted the tension with the thread thicknesses that I'm using for the day, or with this quilt. We're going to talk the tension assembly today and talk tension a little bit here. The numbers on the dial are a reference point. And when you turn your dial, you want to turn it at least a half a turn at a time. So if your 0 starts at the top, take it to the bottom, and then you know you've turned it 1/2 turn all the way around. But sometimes adjusting these, you can turn them 1 or 2 whole turns before you see any real difference in your tension. Okay, at this time what we want to discuss is our bobbin case tension. And on your bobbin case, you have your spring, you have your spring tension adjustment screw, and you have your bobbin spring assembly screw. And the bobbin assembly screw is the smaller one, the tension adjustment's the upper big one. And that's the one that you would want to adjust righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And what you want to do with your bobbin is you should be able to hold it in place, and when you bounce it just a little, it should drop at least an inch, 1.5 inches, and that's the tension on that bobbin is really, really good. Once you get your bobbin tension, you really shouldn't have to adjust your bobbin tension too much. You mainly want to adjust your tension with your upper tension disc assembly. Okay, if you have pokies on the bottom of your quilt, and as a last resort, what you can do is after you've gone through the tension assembly and brought your thread up to the thread guide just above the tension assembly, what you can do is loosen this screw, move the thread guide to the right, and tighten. What that does is that just adds a little bit more tension to bring that bobbin thread into the quilt sandwich. When you're done, and you finish that quilt and the type of thread that you're using, make sure you return it back to the factory setting of moving it to the left and tightening it back up. Okay, again, on your bobbin winding, your built-in bobbin winder on the Tin Lizzie 18, we've shown you how to thread it. Now, it also has a tension disc and it has numbers for points of reference. And generally, this will only take a 1/4 turn at a time to either loosen or to tighten. And again, it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And what you want to do is run your thread through, wrap it around a few times and close this, and your bobbin winder will wind as you quilt. Okay, what we're going to go over now is the features of the machine and how to use them. You have a needle down and a needle up and a start and stop button, and this is your speed dial. So in the manual mode, when you turn the machine on, you can speed the stitch up or you can slow it down. In the needle up position, if you touch the needle up once, it'll give you one full stitch. Needle down, needle up, or you can start the machine in either the manual or the Lizzie stitch. The Lizzie stitch is the stitch regulated mode, and the manual mode is more like your home sewing machine. It's going to run at that constant speed. When I put this in the Lizzie stitch, it will beep and the light will light up. If I click it to start, then once I move the machine, it will start to sew. When I stop the machine, the needle will stop. If I stop the machine and I don't move it, it will beep and turn itself off now. But in the Lizzie stitch, when I start the machine, this knob will adjust the length of my stitches. And I can go all the way to really, really tight to basically a base stitch. By a turn of the dial.
This is the Tin Lizzie 18. The controller is a little bit different than the Tin Lizzie 18 LS. We have our needle up and needle down. You'll notice that with the switch in the bottom position, the needle is in the down position. When we take the switch and move it to the up position, the needle now will go in the up position. Again, pushing the needle down, needle goes down. Now I'm going to have the camera showing the needle up and down. I'm going to go ahead and push the switch in the up position. You'll notice the needle goes up, and I'll push the switch down and the needle goes down. The reason you want to have that is if you want to bring your bobbin thread up, I can now bring the needle up, move the machine back about 6 inches, come back to where your position of where you started, needle down, needle up, and now we can go ahead and trim our thread, and that's how you bring your bobbin thread up. On our control panel we have speed regulated and we also have stitch regulated. Stitch regulated means when we hit this switch, in movement of the machine, it will actually regulate the stitch to where the stitches will be the same length. Up here is how we're going to adjust the stitch length. In stitch regulated mode, when we move it to the left or to the shorter part, it actually makes our stitches closer together, and if we turn it to the right, it will actually make the stitches longer. So we'll go ahead and demonstrate that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the stitch regulated stitch mode on, and you'll notice the needle automatically starts stitching, and you'll notice as I move the machine speeds up, and when I slow down, it slows down. Now if I want to adjust the stitch length, I can go ahead and change the dial here, and my stitches now will be closer together, but it is regulated. And now if I'm going to go ahead and adjust this, I can make my stitches longer. So now I've turned the dial, and now you can see how the stitches are now the longer length. But it's all regulated by the movement, so as I'm moving, it's regulated so the stitches are all the same. This is now speed regulated. When I turn the machine to the left, it's going to automatically go into the motor speed. Now you'll notice that as I move the machine, how close the stitches are together, or if I go a little bit faster, how further apart they are. That's all motor speed, it's not stitch regulated. Now I can change the motor speed down by turning the dial, and you'll notice the stitches, the motor speed is different, but they are not regulated. It's not regulated by the movement. That's motor speed, or what we call speed regulated, not stitch regulated. We're going to talk about adjusting the proper way to adjust the foot in height. We actually have two different areas we can do that, but we're going to show you how we can, by loosening this set screw here, we can raise and lower the foot. When the needle is in the lowest position, you literally want to be able to place a dime right underneath the presser foot, and that is the proper height. But if we need to adjust that, we can literally take the screw here, and by loosening this screw, you'll notice at this point we can raise or lower the proper height of the foot. So as we are sewing heavier batting or lighter batting, we would want to be able to raise or lower it. But if we're just using our standard warm and natural, just the regular ply, this would be the standard size that we'd want to use. But you'll notice here we've got the foot in the proper location. We'll just go ahead and tighten the set screw, and now we're right at the dime's height, and that is the proper height that we would like to have it for standard quilt batting. We've just set the height for the standard ply batting with our dime. We're going to now go ahead and show you how you'd want to adjust it for your thicker battings, for your polyesters, your high loft, or if you're wanting to do trapunto work. Literally what you're going to do is you're going to, again, loosen the set screw, raise the presser foot up, and you'll take 2 dimes, put the 2 dimes underneath the presser foot. At this point you can lower the set screw, or loosen the set screw and lower the presser foot to where it's now in the dime position. Now what's very important is when we do this, we want to make sure again that the needle is in the lowest position. We do that by turning the hand wheel in the back, and that will rotate the needle to the bottom. And then we'll go ahead and do that to where you can see that we actually have 2 dimes. But please make sure that when you're ready to go back to your standard work that you will go ahead and adjust the set screw, loosening it up, making sure that that presser foot is back down to the standard height where it's at a dime's level. Now you notice what we have here. We just adjusted the presser foot by loosening the set screw. This is generally the way you'd want to go ahead and adjust the height of your presser foot. But you can go to the top of the machine, and Terry's going to go ahead and show you how you can adjust the machine or the presser foot height by adjusting these 2 pieces here.
The silver screw on the top, never undo this silver screw, but you have 2 parts that you can loosen, and if you loosen this dial on the bottom of the hopping foot shaft, what this does, and then if you turn the top, this will raise and lower your hopping foot for the thicknesses of your batting. And with it in the needle down position, you literally want this within a dime's distance of the base of the machine. I'm going to lower this hopping foot, and you should be able to slide a dime in and out of there easily. And that is set for warm and natural thickness of cotton batting. If you were using polyester, you would definitely raise this up. Using a really thick polyester batting, you would want to maybe stand 2 or 3 dimes up and slide them underneath. At that point, then what you would do is then tighten the base of this back down so that when the machine does vibrate during use, that doesn't loosen up on you. Well, now that we have finished quilting our area, we need to roll our quilt to the take-up bar. And what you want to do is put your hand underneath the bar here. And if you can't fit your fingers underneath, you need to make sure to raise your take-up rail by loosening these 2 screws and raising up from the bottom. You can do it in 1-inch increments and raise that up about 1 inch and tighten the 2 screws. Go to the other side of the table and do the exact same thing there. Loosen the 2 screws, lift about 1 inch, and then what we want to do is we want to take off and loosen our take-up rail, our gear blocks, and roll the quilt. Tighten our gears and lock them in. I like to straighten my quilt top at this time. Put a little bit of tension to the backing, but not too much. You still want it to be able to bounce. Too much tension on the back will create too much needle deflection. So you want to make sure that it's fairly loose. Tighten up your top. Lock your gear in. Straighten it out. And again, stitch within 1/8 to 1/4 inch down. Stitch within 1/8 to 1/4 inch down on both sides. That way when you quilt real heavily in the middle, it won't pull it in. I'm going to demonstrate to you, if you do not raise this take-up rail, what's going to happen. And I'm just going to let it rest on the bed. I'm going to lower the other side all the way down. And what's going to happen is when I go to quilt, I'm going to be rubbing against the quilt, and it tends to get extremely stiff. So if you make sure that you raise, every time you roll this up, your quilt's going to get thicker and thicker and thicker. Make sure that you raise the take-up rail, and every time you raise it, make sure that you have a fingertips depth underneath. Okay, I've now raised my take-up lever, and I can reach underneath and I can put my fingertips with the ease under here. That will allow the machine to roll from one end of the frame to the other without rubbing against the take